Call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting of the East Troy School District Board of Education and all other meetings of the board are open to the public in compliance with state statute. Notice of the meeting has been sent to the media and/or has been publicly posted in an attempt to make the citizens of the district aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as posted.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on the agenda?
No.
All in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Opposed? Agenda is approved.
I'd also like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the November 9th, 2020 regular board meeting, the November 23rd special board meeting, and also the November 3rd, 2020 special board meeting. So it's 3 meetings of minutes to
Yep.
approve.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion or changes to these meeting minutes? 30th.
The 30th, yep. Aye.
Okay. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public participation? Doesn't look like it. Financial report.
Give me 1 second. Okay. All right, what page is November on, Kathy?
Page
9.
That's October.
Oh.
Thank you. Okay, I would move the approval of the October 2020 payments in the amount of $1,658,681.41 and receipts in the amount of $87,422.50 as reflected on the financial statements. Do you want me to do these separately? Okay. Somebody would like to make a, thank
Okay.
you.
Any discussion, questions on the October financial report?
Okay, I'll move the approval of the November, sorry.
So unemployment, there were some people who collected over the summer. So they qualified legitimately like in the spring because they were subs, for example. But normally we are a school year employer and normally the unemployment ends in the summer. If you recall, that was one of the things that our attorney said when we were investigating the whole how much unemployment might cost us versus laying off individuals last spring. That was one of the pieces of the mathematical puzzle, is that normally in the summer, people don't get paid. There were people who kept qualifying into the summer erroneously. So again, that's something that I'm still under investigation with unemployment because we believe shouldn't have happened. So that's one example. Another example is one employee collecting that I believe should not have, but it could have been because of a different employer. They have 2 employers and we get a piece of that unemployment charged to us even when there's 2 different employers. So I'm still working with unemployment like on both of those situations. We still haven't received any credits. That's a third thing I'm still working on. Well, there's nothing much for me to work on with that one. There's not, back and forth and paperwork to file. We're just still waiting.
Any other questions on that? All right. I also move the approval of the November 2020 payments in the amount of $1,617,010.49 and the receipts in the amount of $203,035.83 as reflected on the financial statements. Thank you.
Okay. Any discussions on the November?
Nope.
Okay. All in favor of approval of the October and November financial reports, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving to discussion action items. First one is a resolution authorizing the school district budget to exceed revenue limits for 5 years for non-recurring purposes.
So you guys have three, A, B, and C, you guys, on your agenda. I'm gonna let Kathy go through the information first before anybody makes a possible motion, and second, which would be for her going through basically the scope of the engagement and then kind of going through the different resolutions that are there. Can you guys hear me all right?
No. We're kind of echoey.
You sound like a fish underwater.
My mask is off. So just, can you get me there?
We hear you, just not clear.
I'm gonna text him that we can hear him, he's just muffled.
Maybe if I shout from here.
Ah, so is this a magic trick? Is there a scarf gonna come out of your hand with multiple colors on it?
Can you guys hear me now or not?
That's better.
Chris is great. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's better.
I'll try to talk softer. Maybe softer is better. Oh. Let me have Kathy go through the informational packets. And then what I'd like you guys to do is then you'll need to determine whether or not somebody will make a motion and a second to each resolution one at a time. So we shouldn't have any discussion until we have a motion and a second on each resolution. Sure, Steve.
Just make sure it's towards you, Steve.
Just the resolution part, you said, Kathy.
So I make a motion.
Yeah, I make a motion that we have a resolution authorizing the school district budget to exceed the revenue limit for 5 years for non-recurring purposes.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion.
Okay, so is my mic on? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. From the past couple of meetings where we've talked about structure of the referendum question, what you have in front of you today would be, it's 3 resolutions, which is a little bit confusing in itself, because at the last meeting, you had 2 questions that we were finalizing and focusing on. Those 2 questions are really B as in boy and C as in cat. A is just any time you're asking an operational referendum question. I guess it's a legal requirement, bond counsel requirement, statutory, that there's a separate resolution that you first realize you're going to be asking voters to exceed the revenue limit. So no matter what the specific resolution was, there's this resolution of, yes, the school board understands we would be asking voters to exceed the revenue limit. Then, what are the 2 types of questions we'd be placing on the ballot come April? And then, as far as the agenda and the resolution goes for B and C, they're both a bit simplified. The full, like what would read on the ballot, I hope you were able to find that in your packets. Page 63, Steve is saying. So that explains, for example, we talked about having the question be in the plug the hole method. How much are we short year 1? 800,000. How much are we short year 2? 800,000 from year 1 plus a new 600,000. How much are we short year 3? Well, it would be the deficit amount from the first 2 years plus the new deficit amount. So now we're at 1.6 million. The first 2 years again are higher because what's happening right now again is with that enrollment dropping this year, the way it factors into that 3-year rolling average in the revenue limit formula, we are hit pretty hard next year and the year after. And remember, the projections have us bouncing back up, have us in enrollment, I should say, have the, hopefully that this was a one-time lower enrollment. Even though we're declining enrollment over history, there's been a slight decline, but this year again, there was this much greater drop. We're projecting that bounces back, but that still doesn't solve the deficit that lingers next year and the year after because of the 3-year rolling average computation is what I'm trying to explain in all of that. So that's, again, how that first question is structured to help us maintain what we're doing now for next year, 21, 22, 22, 23, and then the next 3 years after that as well. Although, again, it's projections and estimates, and we'll see how close those numbers actually come to fruition. And then question number 2 is the bond question, the bond resolution for maintenance. And if that approved, we would be spending for roofs and middle school science upgrades, the science lab upgrades, the middle school putting the main entrance over on this side of the building instead of in the middle of the building, and then a lot of other lighting, parking lots, boilers, so many different capital maintenance projects that add up into that next question. We'd be doing those over the next 3 years with this question. You have questions for myself, for Andy with the maintenance?
I do not.
Go ahead.
Speaking just for me, I mean, I think we've been through this enough now to get to this point. We're sold, the need is there. We know that. I think the big question is, do we all still feel like this is the right format to go with, and are we still on that same page?
I am.
Yeah, I don't see any other option at this point.
And I should recap the tax levy impact. The 2 questions combined, along with a refinancing proposal that you heard from Baird 2 meetings ago, would bring it to 95 cents for a mill rate tax impact. So $95 per $100,000 home, again, is the estimated tax impact.
And Kathy, just to recap, as compared to the last referendum was 97 cents?
I think
97?
I think it was
98.
98. Okay. So this will actually be a lower request going out to voters.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
And the bond portion is still with a very conservative interest rate, so hopefully we'll get it below even the 95 cents, but we like to, again, much like when we built Little Prairie, let people know that it, a higher amount, and then hopefully come in better than that, and not the other way around.
Yep. Okay.
I guess I wish we could have worded the question 1 a little more simply,
Yeah.
simplified it a little more, but now I understand it has to be this way, but I hope it doesn't confuse people.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing about question 1, Tony, which I agree 100% with you about the confusion a little bit, is it aligns to completely to each structural deficit each year of our projections. So that's the clear explanation of it, people understanding where, in the end, we're asking for 8 million. It was about designing the question, as you guys have had to discuss. And so we decided to go with the escalating component to the question, which really aligns then to what we are projecting possibly, to the best of our knowledge, what the deficit will be each year. So by year 5, it's clearly delineating our compounding deficit number, which is very much to the best of our ability where we'll be by year 5. But as Bob said at the last board meeting, and Steve, the years 1 and 2, we're trying to only levy to the amount that we need instead of levying more in those years.
All right, well, we have a motion and a second on the first resolution.
Did you read the second yet?
Yeah.
I think on one of those pages within the packets where it has that first resolution at the top, it wouldn't be a bad idea for us if we could to read the be it resolved, which kind of talks about that resolution in detail. And then you guys could go ahead and vote on the motion by Steve and the second by Jessica.
So it'll be it resolved that we will authorize the school district budget to exceed revenue limit for 5 years for non-recurring purposes. So Steve made that motion to do that. Jessica seconded. Is there any other discussion on that motion? All right, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Sure.
The next one, yep.
I make a motion for an initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $8 million.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So discussion. Have anything else to add on this one, Kathy, or is this pretty much, this is the way it's got to be laid out for the bond?
Yes, yeah. So, bond council drafts the questions so that it abides by, again, the statutes, the legal requirements. I wish they could look simpler, let's put it that way. We will, try to communicate ahead of time what the question will look like to people so they're not surprised when they see it on the ballot.
Okay.
Well, I just like to say that I think we've done our due diligence, and we're trying to take advantage of the low interest rates to refinance decisions that parts of this board or previous boards have made. It's just smart on our part to refinance at a much lower rate. We might never see these rates again, and to take advantage of that. I think it's good for the taxpayers.
Yep.
And overall, like you said before, our tax impact request is considerably less than it was last year. Granted, it's 3 cents, but it's 3 cents less than it was.
Well, and not only is it less, but we're asking for less, and we're getting, what we're going to be able to do now, we're going to be able to take care of both the operational shortfall as well as the capital projects. I mean,
It's smart.
Yeah.
It's really smart to do it right now.
and Steve is right. If the district hadn't done the things up until now to maintain its credit rating and to structure itself to pay off debt in a meaningful format early, we wouldn't be able to do this. That's really the reason that door opened up. So this is the best deal we're going to get during our lifetime, perhaps.
Probably.
Okay. So the motion is to be it resolved that we will authorize general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $8 million. Steve made the motion and Bob seconded.
Yep.
Any other discussion on it? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And I make a motion for a resolution providing for a referendum election on the questions of the approval of a resolution authorizing the school district budget to exceed revenue limit for 5 years for non-recurring purposes, and an initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $8 million.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion on this motion to ask the voters?
I just want to reiterate something. Bob, you had said it at, I don't know which meeting it was, about, you know, if the average home in East Troy is a $300,000 home, and this impact is going to be roughly $300 on you, right? And if you had a project you needed to do on your home to maintain that value, right? Whether that was fixing a broken window or whatever it might be, and you did not spend that $300 to keep your roof from leaking, whatever it was, I think you're foolish to not protect your investment. And homeowners in East Troy and business owners, that's what you're doing. Yeah, it might cost you $300 or more than that or less, but you're protecting your investment, and you're kind of making sure that your investment won't decrease, right? You're putting the school districts on solid financial footing, helping with property values, and protecting devaluation.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand the question that comes up whenever we bring up these issues about, well, I don't have kids in the district. My kids are grown, I don't benefit from this anymore. And the fact of the matter, again, I go back to a local district that went through a much more serious financial situation, and you look at those property values, and you look at what those houses are selling for as compared to East Troy, or Whitewater, or Elkhorn, or McGuanago. I mean, in a perfect world, no, none of us would have to pay for anything. But the fact of the matter is what you give up if this district fails is somewhat catastrophic. So,
And we're here to make sure it doesn't fail.
yep.
Well, and it's hard to find a more worthy investment, too. I mean, if you're going to pay more taxes, I mean, what better thing to go to than the
Right, you
future
know
and our
where they're
kids
going.
and
Yeah.
the school and
Right.
the community, like, what should be the heart and soul of our community. If you have a chance to make a great positive effect in your own town, I mean, there's not a lot of opportunity to have that great of effect on so many.
I had somebody stop me, a couple months ago when we first started discussing this, and the comment that they made initially was, I'd rather see the money go into the business community because the business community is going to turn it around into an investment. And I happened to be standing next to somebody that owned a business in the community, and they said, yeah, but do you know how hard it is to find good employees, whether they're 16 or 36, if you don't have a district that's growing? And I mean, it was kind of like all of a sudden that light bulb went on and it just changed the discussion. And I think that's the thing people don't always stop and think through, is that there are so many places that the district feeds into the quality of life in this community, whether it's the coworker standing next to you on the shop floor, whether it's the people standing in line at the grocery store, whether it's the people you go to church with. Yeah, so.
And that was one of the greatest things I got out of watching the dissolution process in Eagle Palmyra and what happened there, and the angst and the heartache that the citizens of that district was going through, watching their district financially have issues and try to resolve it. And that's the last thing I'd ever want to see happen here.
Yeah, and at some point, it's too late, right? And once people start leaving the district because you're cutting programming, you can't stop it.
No.
It's
and
too
that-
late to come back and try to rectify it then. The students are gone, and good luck
Mhm.
getting them back.
And let's face it, I mean, the hard truth right now is that's where we are. If this does not go through, we have two choices. We can begin to cut at a much more aggressive pace, and we can begin to fund and fuel student growth in McGuanago and Elkhorn and districts around us as they go looking for the things we no longer offer, or we don't make the cuts. And we watch what happens to the reserves that we have. And what did we say, 4 years we can maybe continue with that? My
Yep.
son's in 8th grade. I'd really like to see us still have an East Troy High School when he gets to graduation. And I know I'm not the only one that feels that way, so.
Right, it's a slippery slope that we're getting near. We're not on it yet, but, I mean, like Steve said, if you get on it, it's too late.
Yeah.
We don't want it, we don't want to get there and then decide on this, so.
Okay, we have the motion, we have the second for the resolution to take this to the voters. Any other discussion on it? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to April 6th. All right, next discussion, action item, COVID-19 updates.
I'll try and speak softly because Justin texted me and said that is working better. This is very difficult for me to do, but I will try. So current numbers since September 1st, so our update this year, we're at 52 positive cases, 139 quarantine in district exposures, and 223 quarantine non-district exposures. Those are literally from September 1st, cumulative through now at one time. I thought it'd be interesting for me to share the December 1st through the 14th data, due to the fact it was after the Thanksgiving, and I think that's was kind of on everybody's radar. From December 1st through the 14th, we've had 7 positive cases. We've had 10 quarantine in-district exposures, and we have had 35 quarantine non-district exposures. Those numbers are a part of the total numbers that I represented earlier. From a staffing perspective, up to this point in time, we've had 130 leave requests that were due to some related COVID reason. Now that's not 130 staff members. It's 130 leave requests. So it could be a multitude of a staff member doing it multiple times for various reasons, right? It could be a positive case to, and then they had a close contact, to a close contact in the house. It could be multiple times for one staff member. But we've had 130 leave requests up to this point in time, just strictly due to some related COVID reason. From a standpoint of staffing, and obviously at one point in time, I think it was at our last board meeting, our last regular board meeting when we talked about or a special board meeting, the staffing was an issue, right? We said the complexities of that, not to make an excuse, but it's such a difficult thing to project from one day to the next and then the length. But the November 17th was probably the highest day that we've had, which is the day I reported out on at one of our special meetings, which was when we had 30 staff absences due to COVID related. The good news is we have not had that number again, and that is good news. On 12/14 today, we were at 13 staff absences due to COVID related reasons. To give you an idea of that, it's gone pretty much each week after the 30 has been around 19 to 14 to 13. So we dropped off quite significantly, which is very good news for us right now. I'm not saying that means next week we couldn't jump back up to 30, right? But the good news is that at 19, 14, and 13, I think we can handle that staff absences, but it's when it does get into that 30 range that we really felt a lot of strong challenges, especially if a majority of the 30, 20 are from a building, right? That's when we have to look at it from a building-wide building perspective, not a district perspective. Walworth County COVID-19 on their district dashboard from a geographical boundary again, this is not just strictly students, right? This is their geographical boundary of the East Troy School District. From November 22nd to December 6th is the most recent on that timeline. There were 106 confirmed cases, which is a rate of 91.36 per 10,000 because of our 11,603 populace, which puts us into that critical range. If you recall, their metrics is critical of 50 plus. But we have been in critical for some time. On October 14th is the first time that East Troy from the geographical boundary got put into the critical, and we were at 73 at that point. And then October 25th, we jumped up to, from October 25th to November 8th, we jumped up from 73 to 109. And now we're actually 106. So we've kind of stayed at that 106, 100 marker. It is a critical, but maybe we're hopefully going to stay at that 100 marker for a while and stabilize a little bit. From a virtual learner's perspective, on the weekly report, on December 14th, we are at 126 full-time virtual learners, which is about 8.5% of our student populace. And that's pretty much relatively, you guys, what we've been maintaining throughout October and November and now December. We've been anywhere from 8% to up to 8.9%. At the beginning of the year, to give you an idea, right, we were at 9.8% when we first began the school year. With that said, I think this is really an important statistic or statistics that I wanted to share with you, and that is, you'll recall that we had obviously a very long, lengthy meeting about what we were going to do after Thanksgiving. And from that, I had sent out 2 various letters to our community of families, telling them that, basically, I don't know what you will be doing over the break and gatherings, but if you're going to be gathering and celebrating with friends and extended families, that we would highly urge you to consider doing virtual for a shorter period of time, whether it be a week or 2 weeks. And then obviously, that's their choice. The temporary virtual, as we called it, in temporary virtual, we kind of denoted that as including day-to-day parent choices and our COVID protocols. So kids that had to be quarantined for close contact. So of those temporary virtual after that date, so I'll use December 1st as an example, we had 179 students do temporary virtual, meaning either the parents chose that for a small period of time, or some of that was we were obviously maybe quarantining a child or children for close contact. But if you look at our numbers on December 14th, we had not had a large amount of close contacts, right? So a lot of that is primarily then parent choice. Parents were choosing to take a break, a pause from in-person due to the fact of possibly maybe the letter. And that is outside, the 179 is outside the 100 and, if you want to stay on average, 125 full-time virtual kids. So if you take those right numbers, that's 304 pupils that we had go to virtual learning, either the full-time virtual learners or the temporary, which is 20% of our student populace. So 20% of our student populace, upon your guys' dialogue and discussion, which I think was great, upon hopefully the letter that I sent, decided in their interest they just wanted to utilize virtual learning at that time. And I think honestly that probably helped us on in the in-person learning environment a lot, that so many took that course. And really, most of those numbers from the week of December 1st through the 4th are very similar. So we maintained around that 300 total student populace doing virtual learning during that 1 week after Thanksgiving. The second week, from December 7th to December 10th, there was a slight increase or decrease in the temporary virtual. We went from about around, like I said, a 179 to 200 is where we were the previous week. In the second week, we went from anywhere from 133 to 115 was the range. So there was a decrease still, but it still was about 16% of our full student populace. So about 16% still chose that. So where I'm going with that is I will be sending out another letter tomorrow. Due to the fact I think it's really important to get out tomorrow, because Lindsay would tell you that Little Prairie Primary needs to plan for if people are going to choose temporary virtual upon returning after winter break, that they need to get necessary materials to the students before they leave for winter break. So I'll be sending a letter out to all families tomorrow, very similar to the Thanksgiving letter. I'll send one out for the winter, which just talks about getting together with extended family and friends, and if you are, to consider possibly doing virtual learning when you come back on the 4th of January. And I'll recommend that they consider doing it from January 4th to January 8th, which is the 1 week, or possibly January 4th to January 15th, which is 2 weeks. And again, it's their choice, their options, but I would not be shocked to see people choose, at least 20% again of our student populace choosing that methodology until maybe the 3rd week of January, which again, does really assist us in our schools that we maybe have 20% less the populace. It does help. So I have more information, but I'll stop there in case there's any questions on all of that first.
No?
No? Okay. All right, the next piece of information on COVID, just to give you an update, is on transportation. And the whole transportation department, and Craig and Rachel deserve so much credit. They really do. I mean, this is where we've had shortages a lot, right? And we've due to other various reasons, just it doesn't have to always be related to COVID by any means. And as all of us know, we always have substitute driver shortages, right? This is not an unknown and not a trend just in East Troy. But with that being said, I couldn't be more happy about that contingency plan that we have done in the early fall in regards to what were we going to do if we were down a certain set of drivers. And that plan has been utilized for the last six weeks plus, and it will be utilized even after winter break. So that contingency plan has been a huge lifesaver for us to continue the transportation without having hopefully too much of inconvenience to families and to the school. To give you some data really quick, so at the first week of school, again, I always use that as our baseline, we had 418 AM riders, and we had 508 PM riders. And if everybody recalls, a bus has 24 seats in it. And there were sometimes prior to the pandemic where we had the bus completely full with three riders per seat for 72 on a bus. And we said, obviously, we cannot do that under the current conditions, which was going to create an issue. So we've maintained that, but lately, and this is a credit to the parents. Again, parents are listening, I think, to us when we're sending out our letters and as we talk about this at board meetings, and they're making, I think, really good, strong choices when they're able. And that is the week of December 1st through the 4th and the week of December 7th, we saw the numbers drop pretty significantly on the bus. And I think, I do believe, and I will attribute that to the board's conversation about after Thanksgiving into our letters and what we're talking to them about. So the number after, I'll give you an example, on December 7th, we had 312 AM riders and 435 PM riders. So I mean, we almost had 100 less on both the morning routes and the afternoon routes than what we did at the beginning of the school year. And I do think that was attributed, again, to our discussions about, close contact tracing and just large mass gatherings in an area and after Thanksgiving. So a credit goes to parents that are able, I get it, that not everyone can do that, but that are able to do that. They're really helping us and assisting us. This week we are at, and I just got the information, we're at 300, we're back up to a little higher. We're at 351 for AM and 462 for PM. And just so you have an average, basically our highest numbers then on a bus are in the AM, about 29 and 35, and not on average, these are high. And on the PM, 33 to 34 is the high range, not average. So we're able to maintain, we're definitely maintaining one, and in some cases, 2 kids to a seat tops. And no bus right now is even close to 48 kids on a bus. So we do not at least have all seats full with 2 children per seat, which is really good news because that'll assist us a lot with contact tracing and hopefully limiting that amount. So I've been trying to keep you guys in the loop. Why have we been able to do this somewhat successfully when we've had shortage of drivers? We've had to double up on routes, so we have 2 of our routes right now, and we doubled up on routes that we can have that capacity still stay low, and that still works fairly well within our routes, so that from a timing perspective it works. And also have done the other one too, we've combined routes. So we've taken the Quail route and the Alligator route, and I always get a kick out of this, they call it the Quailigator, And we have taken those routes, and now we're having 2 different routes on one bus. Again, due to the fact we're able to do that because of the location, the relative location of those routes, and the number of students already on those buses. So we're able to keep it to a minimum. What we're anticipating is, after winter break, we're anticipating that we still will have a driver shortage after winter break. So after winter break, we are anticipating that we're going to have to continue to double up on some routes. So we'll continue to double up on some routes, but we think what we're going to do is probably be able to split a bus route onto 2 other routes. So we'll take 1 bus route currently, and we'll just split that bus onto 2 other routes because of our lower numbers. We think we'll be able to do that. So again, I just want to say it's worked out really well. The combining of routes and the doubling up of routes has really, really helped. And that goes to credit to our staff too, because the principals had to work out with their staffs. When we doubled up routes, then they had to make sure we had proper supervision quite early in the morning. Because if you think about it, we wanted all the kids there on time. So some kids were getting picked up earlier and getting dropped off earlier, and then the bus was going back out for the double route. So we had to work out then proper supervision in the mornings for staff to be there earlier. And so there's a big credit to our building level principals to work out that entire management system for this part of the system to work. I'd like to believe it's a really responsive system. We're not reacting, we're responding, and it's gone quite well. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on the transportation part of it. Okay, on the athletics, athletics is going quite well, and I've got a lot of wood in front of me, and I'm going to knock on it. I'm going to knock on it a lot because I do not want to jinx us. But the athletics seems to be going quite well, and as you know, we're in the higher risk sports. I mean, we're inside. We're having more contact sports this winter than we did in the fall. So these are higher risk sports, and we've had to even go to a higher degree of our mitigation measures. But so far, we have had a lot of success this winter. We've had a few non-conference events. Our non-conference events do allow spectators, but very, very limited. So Reed has a great process in place where in advance, families can request numbers of tickets, but we only right now allow 2 per family. He gets those, he gives, the tickets get it in advance, and then they sit down and we have it all designated out about 6 to 10 feet apart, both ways and directions, vertically and horizontally, and it's been great. I went to an event and I was very impressed. And I've seen pictures, but I wanted to experience it for myself. And I couldn't have felt safer at the event, to be quite frank. With our conference game, the conference, not East Troy, the conference elected to not have spectators. That was the only way that some teams were feeling comfortable because they had not done any athletics at this time, and we understood that. We weren't going to be a barrier. So any conference game at this time, we do not have spectators. Everything is live streamed still. But for our non-conference games, we do have spectators, but again, very limited. And I can't thank Reed enough for all the mitigation measures and the coaches and the athletes. It's really crucial for us to continue to do this and do it well for us to live up to our objective. Remember, our objective wasn't to not have an exposure. The reality is we probably will have an exposure and we'll have to have a pause. But the reality is that we said we're going to reduce exposure and mitigate spread. And I think we've done a real thorough job up to this point in doing that. So credit to you guys in allowing athletics to continue. And again, I think not only our success on the safety side, but how our students are feeling that experience is critical that we did this. And I can't thank you enough for allowing it to happen. Another big step that we're taking actually today on the 14th, if you look at our reentry handbook, it would be in the middle of it probably. I couldn't tell you the page number, but it's under facility use. Under facility use, you'll notice that it states right there on a bullet point, it states that facilities on 12/14, which is today, will begin to allow outside non-East Troy affiliated groups to request the use of facilities for meetings, just to request, and practices. Up to this point in time, Reed said the people that have requested it, that are interested in doing it so far, are all primarily our youth groups. But he has reached out to our high-end users that in the past have always used facilities for one reason or another. but he said most of them have not reached back, meaning they probably have found some alternative up to this point in time and are comfortable. But our youth groups were waiting, and I think they're ecstatic that we're now going to move forward with allowing our youth groups. But I do want to let you know, it's different. And what I mean by that is, they have to complete the facility request form as always. But then on top of that, they need to complete the addendum to the facility use agreement. So we created an addendum to our facility use agreement, which outlines clearly and very strongly and firmly what they need to be agreeing upon to use our facilities, which relates back to our COVID-related expectations and protocols. So they have to agree to that, and there's a lot of strong language in there. Once they agree to that, then Reed will also goes over a specific COVID-19 expectations from the East Troy Community School District for any facility user. And those expectations are everything that we're doing within our district, from it's required that you wear face coverings. It's required that you practice good hand hygiene. It's required that you know whomever else is coming into the building at the time, that they have been monitored and that they have been encouraged to stay home if they're not feeling well. For any youth groups, it's required that they can, that only the group itself will be in our facility, meaning parents, you're dropping off and picking up. You're not waiting in our facility and out in the gymnasium or outside the doors while your child is practicing. No, you'll be waiting outside. Only the group that's using the facility will be in the facility. And then Reed has adjusted, just so you know. Obviously, in the past, we would always try to get as many groups in as we could, as quickly as we could. That's different this year. People have to be patient. We are allowing at least 15-minute gaps between usage of groups, so we don't have overlapping of groups. And that group must get out immediately. Like if you were supposed to be done at 8:30, you don't get to run late and go, what's the big deal? It's only 8:37. It's a big deal when we have another group coming in and we can't have mass gatherings. So we're creating a buffer in that time of crossing. So that's one of the big things, but that's a pretty big step, to be quite frank, in our district, that now we're opening it up to the outdoor facility use. But please note, with very strong, stringent measures, and we will keep a very strong eye on what's occurring. Is there any questions on that? Okay. And the final thing that I wanted to go over, some of you probably have heard, if not, then I'm going to be informing you for the first time, but there has been new guidance in regards to guidance to quarantine and number of days to be quarantined. CDC came out and DHS in support of let me finish before you jump on, so they want that. They came out in support of saying they're willing to support a shortened period for close contacts, not illness, not somebody who's tested positive, just for close contacts in quarantine. But they said very clearly, right, it's only if they are able to remain symptom-free, it's only if they're able to self-monitor, and it's only if they're able to isolate immediately once they become symptomatic. That's really important, all those things, right? Because it kind of goes to how responsible can one be in the age of somebody being responsible to be able to do that. So what it means is, if we were to move forward with that shortening period, it basically is allowing organizations to go from a 14-day quarantine of a close contact to 10 days. As long as they are still symptom-free by the end of the 10th day, they could return on the 11th day. Now, there's also another component that says, or they could actually return after 7 days if they are symptom-free and they've gotten a negative test on the 7th day. It could actually be the day 6 too. They say day 6, day 7, or day 8. But a negative test basically within a 48-hour window of that end period of time. And if that's negative, then they could come back. So there's all this out there. Now, in the end, I think what's really important for people to hear, in the end, CDC, DHS, and Walworth County Public Health, they have come out and said, we recognize that, we're saying that can be done, but we continue to recommend a 14-day quarantine. We continue to recommend a 14-day quarantine to be on the safest side. because of what we know about incubation periods right now. So we have had a discussion at our administrative team level about this. And at this time, what we are stating we believe should happen is we're going to stay with our current protocols that are in place, which would be for staff and for students, not differ for either one. That we're going to stay with, if you're a close contact, you're going to stay within our 14-day quarantine window right now. And the rationale behind that is a couple things. We will be more than happy to revisit this and look at this, but we want to, if you take a look around, and I think this is a really good point, if we take a look around, we've been able to stay with our model for 4 months. Now, I think that's beaten a lot of odds this year already. We've been able to do it for 4 months. And there's a piece of me that says, I don't want to take a chance on what seems to have been working right now. The second thing is, we do have the winter break coming up. And I would prefer for us to not make this change at this point in time with the winter break coming up, when we're going to be sending out a letter asking people to possibly consider virtual learning again based upon what they did over the winter break. So to me, the earliest we should even discuss the new requirements of consideration would be in the middle of January, like January 18th. And I'm more than happy to go back and discuss it, but I don't think we should consider it until the middle of January. We need to get through that, and then we can discuss. And we can see how it's gone, maybe a little bit, a few other places, to be quite honest. A few other places probably will implement it, and we can get some feedback on it. But to me, knowing that we have had some shortages and other things, even though that might help us with shortages, because we could get that back quicker, I get it. We will take a look at that. But right now, I'd prefer not to lose staff to us having them return back quicker, and then all of a sudden they become symptomatic, or students. One other big thing that I think I want everybody to understand when it comes to this, and this kind of gets lost in everything. If we were to adopt the new shortened method, if a child or a staff member came back within that, let's say, 8th day or within the 11th day, and then they become symptomatic while at school, it's not just that they get sent home. Any person they were in close contact with, even though they have not tested positive, must be sent home. So that's different than what we're doing now. So we send kids home now on close contact when we know of a positive test of a child, and then we do the close contact tracing. But if we do the shortened method, then what you need to understand is, under the shortened method, if somebody comes back on the 11th day, and now they develop symptoms on day 11 or day 12, we don't wait, you cannot wait for the test before you do your close contact tracing. You have to do your close contact tracing right away, and everybody who's identified must go home, even without the positive test. So there's a pro on one end, but there's a pretty big con on another. So I just wanted to bring you guys up to abreast of that, because I think you may have had people reach out to you, or you might have people reach out to you. I'm sure this will make some people happy, and it'll make some people very unhappy that we're not trying to limit the number of days. It's not something that we're saying we won't go back and revisit, but I think we should get through these next few weeks. We should get through the winter break, and we should get through the 14 days after the winter break, and then we can revisit, how's this shortened recommendation possibly going, and should we consider it after a later time? That make sense for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. In the January board meeting, you guys, I'm going to bring forth the November family survey responses. I've got them all. I just would like to be present and do a slideshow with them if I can, instead of going over them through the Google Meet verbally. But we had 704 surveys were submitted back to us, so 992 total responses, because obviously a multitude of kids in the family. So that incredible response rate, and very good responses from a standpoint of in-person and virtual. There's some very good dialogue and very good narrative in regards to things we can continue to work on, which I appreciate the feedback, but overall, a a survey that demonstrates we are definitely, as a district, moving in the right direction and doing things that families are very appreciative about. But I'll report that out at the January board meeting for that. And I think that is it for the COVID update.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Anybody have any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. Next item is a revised staffing recommendation for the 2021 school year for operational consideration.
Yeah, let me just find my notes here on that. So what we're recommending and what we'd like the board to consider tonight is we did meet after we talked, after we shared about a month ago our staffing concerns and how we felt we were, at that point in time, there was no doubt, we felt we were kind of at a breaking point, at least in one building, about whether or not should have we had a grade level possibly closed for a due point of time, or should we had a building even closed. And at one point or another, I think every building and every grade level probably could have that discussion. We met, and we met for an entire day, trying to delineate where is that line for when there will be a grade level closure, a building closure, or possibly even a district. And I will tell you, I think we met for hours, maybe even the whole day. And in the end, we could not delineate that specific framework because it is such, and I'm not a huge fan of this word always, but it is such a huge fluid moving target. And we don't know from one day to the next, and we don't even know the length always. So we were trying to get into, well, should it be based upon how many staff were having to be used for in that classroom, and how long do we have to have a multitude of staff being used in one classroom? And when it's when it reaches a certain capacity of inconvenience to other classrooms besides that classroom. And we just start going around and around. I mean, and then to be quite, you get into the middle school and high school are like a different beast than the elementary when you start dealing with it. And you have different parameters to those. So in the end, what we came to was, look, our primary objective is to stay with our operational model that we have. That's our primary objective. I don't think anybody here would debate that. And I think we've demonstrated that for 4 months, that we're trying to stay with in-person learning and providing virtual learning as an option for parents with a lot of flexibility, even though I know staff, and I've heard, and I appreciate staff getting back to me that it is a very big challenge, even though they're not two different platforms, to still be doing both, especially when we're allowing such fluidity to parents picking and choosing almost from day to day. And that's something I think we're gonna have to take a look at in due time, is continue to be flexible, continue to work the options, but maybe having to bring it back a little bit in regards to trying to be more consistent about if you're choosing virtual, doing it for a certain number of weeks or even quarter or semester or trimester rather than day to day, right? Unless it's being on a quarantine basis. Because I think that's becoming very challenging for our staff, and I understand that when it is so flexible from day to day that you just don't even know who's going to be in person or virtual for the day. So that's something we're taking a look at and we're hearing. But with that said, to continue our operational model and to try to maintain it to the best of our ability, there's no promises of being able to keep it without a shortfall, right? But what we're recommending is, after a long discussion, is doing what we did back in August, and that is adding 2 more additional teachers to our staffing assignments for the remainder of the year. What we're looking at is, if the board were to approve it tonight, we would get it posted, we would do interviewing, and if we could find 2 quality candidates, hopefully by mid-January or late January, we would bring them on board, and then they would serve in the capacity as a teacher in our district for the remaining 5 months, you know, or 4.5, I guess. And then, so basically from the end of January to the end of the year. The basic premise behind this is, if you were to ask me, so where are they gonna be, Chris? Where are you gonna utilize them? I don't have that answer right now, and that's not because we haven't discussed it. As you know, with the other long-term teachers that we hired for this whole year, they're constantly moving. Yes, we were able to put one in every building, but they've been in different buildings at different times. What we would do with these individuals is we probably would strongly look at the elementary levels. Now, that could change, as we know, but it seems like where we have some of our greater concerns when it comes to staffing is probably more at the pre-K through 5. And it's not because we have more absences, even though sometimes we do, we've had them all over, but it's because of the structure, the schedule, right? We don't have specific disciplines like we do at the middle school and high school. We have a classroom. So the cohort's in that classroom, the whole grade, right? And the teacher teaches all the disciplines. So we would want to look at possibly if one, if not two, would both be at the elementary levels to give us some flexibility. We also are looking at, and don't hold me to this, I know I'm on the YouTube channel, don't hold me to it, but we're looking at what have we learned through the first 4 months now of doing this at all grade levels. And at the elementary level, one of the things we've learned and we're hearing is that virtual can be somewhat difficult at especially the early primary grades for students, especially when you have a substitute and a staffing. So then the question needs to bake itself and to be explored. I will state to be explored. And that is, should we possibly have a teacher be devoted to the virtual at a specific grade level or grade levels at that level? Because then they would have one primary teacher who could work on all the recordings, the live streaming, and just do that in general. I don't know if that's possible. I'm saying it's something that we want to explore due to the fact of what we're now understanding after 4 months. So that's the rationale behind it. If you're going to ask how much, it would be a proration off of a first-year teacher. So we would prorate the amount for those course of those months at the amount that we would pay a first-year teacher. I think the bigger question is, if you approve it, is can we find a quality individual, 2 quality individuals? And Amy is reaching out to universities at this time due to the fact of, semester ending in mid-January for a lot of student teachers probably that have to complete their student teaching experience that would be available. Any questions on that before you guys have any possible discussion or make a motion or anything on it?
I don't think so.
No. Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the revised staffing recommendation for the 2021 school year for the operational consideration as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
I think it's a good idea. Have somebody in and dedicated.
Yeah, I would tend to agree.
If ever we were going to need them, this is the year.
Yep, let's get through the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, next item, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act after the calendar year and whether there is no federal extension of the leave.
Excuse me.
Am I on again? Yep, okay, I think so. So back in the spring, when the pandemic first began, pretty quickly, the federal government put forth FFCRA, a Families First Coronavirus Relief Act. And I think a big component of that act was some paid leave for employees all through the nation. I believe it does affect employers with less than 500 employees, though. And for private sector employers, there is like a tax credit process that you can do. For public sector employers, we don't have taxes, we don't do that process, so there's no credit also to collect for this. But what it is basically, I say there's 3 buckets. There's 3 buckets of this FFCRA leave. One bucket is 2 weeks of leave for reasons of COVID, like an employee gets COVID themselves, they're quarantined, they're awaiting test results, and that leave again is equivalent to whatever their 2 weeks looks like. So if they're a full-time employee, it's 80 hours, but if you work 4 days a week normally, then it's 8 days worth of leave, so on. Second bucket of this leave is 2 weeks, and I, again, try to simplify it into it's more related for childcare reasons. Maybe your daycare is closed. Maybe your school closed and you are the one that needs to be home with your child. There's also a sliver of a reason, it's reason number 4 if you look at the FFCRA sheet, that your child is quarantined because they were a close contact, but they're not sick, you're not getting them tested. Very few fall into that category, but that's another one. And that particular leave for 2 weeks is paid at 2/3. And then we elected in our employee guidebook that staff, if they have East Troy sick leave, can use sick leave for the remaining 1/3 to be fully compensated if they need that sort of a leave. Then, last but not least, there's a third bucket. I think this one's called EFMLA. The first two are EPSLA, EPSLA. Anyway, EFMLA was an additional 10 weeks beyond those first 2 weeks for, again, those childcare reasons. So your daycare is closed, your school is closed. It was reason number 5, and it was an extension of 10 more weeks, again at 2/3 of the employer is mandated to give 2/3 paid leave above and beyond any sort of sick leave, and then we allow backfill with sick leave. So that's a little recap of what the law was. That law expires December 31st, 2020. I haven't heard anything about any sort of extension at this point in time. So we're all trying to figure out, okay, well, maybe there's going to be an extension in the next couple of weeks. We'll hear about it on the news, and in that case, the law is the law, and away we go, we have to follow that. But in the absence of a law forming, I guess I look at it like local control. Now, we here have a couple choices in front of us. Obviously, a lot of times, when a law expires, right? No more law, it's not there. But I think, again, some public opinion is it's local control now. Possibly, is it meant to be in the individual employer's hands as to whether or not they proceed with some sort of COVID-related leave on our own? So Friday, the Rock Valley Conference business managers and superintendents had a joint meeting, and this was the hot topic. What are you doing? Are you going to extend any leave? And we went around, and now granted, our board meeting, December 14th, is one of the earlier ones. I don't think anybody in that group had formally made a decision yet. So it was all still, I think this is what my board might do. I think this is what we're gonna propose. But it ran the gambit. A couple of schools were saying, nope, we're just gonna recommend the law's done. There's no more leave on top of any sick leave that an employee may have. All the way to, there's one school district that said, this is a pandemic and we're not even kind of granting leave, but we're saying anything and everything's covered. Okay, there's not even limits on it, like the 10 days that I mentioned, or the 2 weeks equivalent, or if it's daycare, the full additional 10 weeks. So I would say those were the two extremes. Most people were falling into, and have you found the page that this is on?
Yep.
65.
Most people were falling into, so again, there was probably about 8 of us on the call, 2 were saying they were gonna let the law expire, option 3. 1 was even above what the law was as written, but then the majority of the other people were talking about option 1 or option 2. So what's option 1 and what's option 2 that's written on this paper? I'm just gonna read it and then try to summarize. So option 1, in the event the law is not rewritten for January 1st, 2021 and beyond, the East Troy School Board would elect to extend the law for reasons 1 through 3, and that's on the back of this. That was the FFCRA language originally, through the end of the 2021 school year. And again, to recap, reasons 1 through 3 are kind of the employee themselves got COVID, is getting tested for COVID, has symptoms at the direction of a doctor, is getting tested, or is subject to some sort of quarantine. They're a close contact and they're required to quarantine through the end of the 2021 school year. In addition, no new allocation of this leave is being provided, because we talked about, well, if we say we're extending this leave, will people think they have a brand new 2 weeks? And we wanted to make clear, what I'm recommending tonight anyway, and you can do whatever you want again. If the law's expired, you can create anything you want, but I'm recommending there's not a brand new 10 days or 2 weeks. If somebody's used the leave already, they don't get a new bank, is what I'm saying. Therefore, if a staff member has already exhausted the leave, 1/121 does not add new leave. Reasons previously qualifying under 4 and 5, no additional sort of bank. But again, this is something up to interpretation. So we talked about, would we allow East Troy sick leave? And remember, reasons 4 and 5 are your child kind of reasons. So your daycare's closed, your child attends another school district like Williams Bay, and Williams Bay closes, and you don't have anybody else to care for your child. So what we're saying here is an option 1, whereas before there was that FFCRA leave that would give you 2 weeks at 2/3 and an additional 10 weeks was the emergency. We would not have those at all. And what we would say, though, very generously, is you could use sick leave, because normally sick leave is somebody sick again, right? So, but we're in a pandemic, saying here with option number 1, the employee could use sick leave. Option 2, very similar. In the event the law is not rewritten, the East Troy School District has elected to extend the reasons for all reasons, and I want to amend that 1 through 5 if we go. 6 is this goofy, nobody's used it at East Troy schools or at any other school I talked to. It was this vague, experiencing other substantially similar condition specified by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Again, to my knowledge, that hasn't been defined nor has been used. So 1 through 5, while limiting reason number 5 to 2 weeks rather than the previous 12. So again, there were like these 2 buckets. First was 2 weeks at the 2/3, and then there was a second part of the act that was called EFMLA, and that was another 10 weeks. So just limiting it to 2 weeks, just like everything else, through the end of the 2021 school year. And again, no new allocation of the leave being provided. So if a staff member has already exhausted the leave, 1/1 does not add new leave. Reasons previously qualifying under number 5 for weeks 3 through 12, because again, this option would give it for 2 weeks, would qualify for East Troy sick leave that the staff may have available. Reminder, most of our support staff, that is less than 30 hours a week, will not have sick leave. Okay, full-time support staff will have sick leave. Full-time teachers, professional staff will have sick leave. So that's kind of a synopsis. Again, looking for what's the pulse here. Do we want to approve some sort of extra leave beyond what, again, some employees have as sick leave for COVID-related reasons?
How many staff have used this in the first half of the year so far? I mean, what's our
Great
real
question.
exposure?
What's that?
I'm just trying to figure out what our real exposure is. If we've had
Yes.
25 staff already, and we're not starting new leave over,
Great question. So we've had approximately It's over that now, 130 uses of leave that have fallen under FFCRA. So about 130, now, when I say 130, it's not 130 unique staff members, because some staff
Days.
members might have had 2 or 3 issues already. So, but we've had, I counted them when I was preparing for this, 130 different times of somebody in close contact, getting a test, positive themselves, daycare closed. Now, the daycare closed one, or the very slim used one of my child is quarantined for being a close contact, but is not sick. Normally, they go and get a test, and when that happens, then I push them into reason number 1 because of the whole, somebody in the household's getting a test, now the household's quarantined. So there's just a very slim time, it's reason number 4. But 4 and 5 have only been 8 times of that 130. So the majority, 122, have been reasons 1 through 3 for us. I can tell you a lot of the other schools that were on that conference call, but you have to think, a lot of the other schools that were on the conference, Rock Valley, are virtual now, have a lot of neighboring schools that are virtual. They've encountered the 4 and 5 situation a lot more than us. So they even have provisions like, well, they themselves are virtual. They can bring, the kids can come into school with the teachers. If that's still not possible and the teacher's able to teach from home, then they have them using 3/4 of leave and 1/4 not leave, because they figure it's like a 6-hour day, and they've gone into lots and lots of explanations and lengths of their protocol because of having a lot more in the 4 and 5. And I will say that as an administrative team, when we've had the what-if conversations about what if we go virtual, what if we have to shut down, 4 and 5 become our biggest worry because, again, of what do our own teachers do with their kids when we're shut down.
Kathy, has anybody completely exhausted their 2 weeks?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, several.
okay. And are they afraid of what's, have they had multiple exposures?
Yes. Yeah, I very often, if you think about it, one situation, you're probably going to exhaust your 10 days. Because if you're a close contact of 14, if you're at home because you yourself have a positive test, 10 days. So you're probably going to exhaust your 2 weeks in a full situation. The only time they don't is if they have symptoms, their doctors told them to go get a test and it's negative. Then they might be back shorter. Otherwise, they've been out and their leave's been used.
Have we had any instances where that, they've used their leave and then they've had to go and find something else because now they're COVID positive again, or a situation warrants that a second time?
Yes, so right now, again, when they use up their federal leave, then they go either into, if they have East Troy sick leave, or if they don't have East Troy sick leave, then it's automatically docked pay. And then they're filing for unemployment. They can file for unemployment if they want to. I don't think I've had any that have had sick leave run out of sick leave on it. They've certainly used sick leave. But then to answer your question before, yes, many times people say that federal leave can go pretty fast, pretty quick, and especially if you have multiple situations, multiple issues.
I would personally be inclined to, if the law is not rewritten, to be proactive in the sense and want to provide something for our staff, at least through the end of the school year, see if we can, again, that's not an additional brand new, like you said, it's not a whole new term, but if we can extend it just within the district through the end of the year, get our staff through, I think that would be good.
think to me, option 2 seems to make the most sense. It does extend it, but puts a little bit of limits around it.
Yeah, I just want to have something. We value our staff, and I think it's important to support them. And this may be a small way that we can do that.
I think I like option 2 also, and I think just what you're saying, reiterate, as a team, we were talking, and we recognize that if it's not extended at the federal level, if it is, it's, no discussion needed, no action needed. But if it's not extended, sure, boards could elect to not provide. But one of the big things that we get concerned about, we want to help all our staff, but knowing that a large percentage of our support staff that's not full-time, they would not have any sick leave provided to them under the current conditions of a pandemic, which is difficult because then if we're telling them they have to be quarantined, we're telling them for 14 days, and that could happen a multitude of times in the coming months still, they're going to take complete doc days every single one of those days. And so there's a piece of me that thinks option 2 helps to alleviate that by at least allowing them, you know, again, when the new year comes around, if it's not extended to the federal level, be given at least 10 days to assist them. And then it does assist others from, yes, they have their sick leave days already. Some have a nice bank and others don't, due to good reason, right? Maybe new to the district, or they had to use it all up through FMLA. But at least it allows them an additional 10. And I would say, you know, under these circumstances, it requires different ways of thinking. And I mean, we're a pandemic. So, and yet, what I like about option 2 is it doesn't provide the 12 weeks any longer. I don't think it's doable by us to do that, but it does at least provide ample time for hopefully somebody to figure out what they need to do by allowing it 2 weeks, you know, for the childcare part. That's just my opinion.
Well, we've talked a lot this year too about the stress that's being put on the staff in many different forms. And, you know, from my standpoint, we have too many good people that we can't risk losing. And we've talked before about the fact we are not as competitive on compensation and benefits within our CISA and within our areas we would like to be. I think this is I mean, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to worry about any additional budget outlays this year. But to me, this just seems like a common sense way to say to people that we're trying to help in a meaningful fashion to the best degree that we can. So.
If you're steering to option 2, if you can amend my reasons 1 through 6 to 1 through 5, and then I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna have to write some language around this into the handbook. Yeah, so I didn't prepare that in advance of tonight, didn't have a chance to get that ready, and I wasn't gonna do it for all 4 options, so just know that I'll be like using some interpretation, but that'll be the direction I go in when I write the handbook language. Yes, it's all under the premise Steve said that it doesn't get extended. If something again comes in the news that the lawmakers have extended it, that overrides our policy.
But it would be nice to have it in place in the event that they don't,
Yes.
you know, get it together and figure something out before the new year.
Absolutely.
It's pretty irresponsible of them to, yeah, I mean, at least tell us we plan on it expiring.
We don't even know
Not
the
just leave it
biennial
hanging. I mean,
budget
that's-
on a timely basis. Come on now. I mean, honestly. Is there anybody that's leaning toward option 1, or do we feel that option 2 is going to be the best for our district?
I think option 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with 2.
Okay. If we're cool with that, I will make a motion to approve option 2. As Kathy said, in the event that a law is not rewritten for the January 1st, 2021 and beyond, the East Troy School Board has elected to extend the law for reasons 1 through 5 while limiting reason number 5 to 2 weeks rather than the previous 12 through the end of the 2021 school year. In addition, please note, no new allocation of this leave is being provided. Therefore, if a staff member has already exhausted leave, January 1st, 21 does not add new leave. Reasons previously qualifying under number 5 for weeks 3 through 12 would qualify for any East Troy sick leave staff may have available.
I'll second.
Okay. Other discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, approval of the 2021-2022 school year calendar. Pages 86 and 87.
Yep, 86 and 87. Anything fun and exciting on the calendar?
Trying to remember, I don't think there's any huge changes. At all.
Stability, wow.
Yeah, I think it mimics very closely, because I'm looking at both of them, 86, 87. You have your 2021 calendar on page 87, and then on page 86, the recommended 21, 22. Number of days have stayed the same. Spring break, Easter is very, very late. It's not till April 17th, so there is a March spring break put in.
Yep.
But, yeah, I'm not seeing anything significantly different from this year's calendar.
No in-service date for May? It's the only thing I saw.
Correct. You are right. No in-service date in May in order to try to keep the in-service days the same.
Okay.
The total number the same.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2021-2022 school year calendar as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The 2021-2022 high school planning guide.
Hello, hello. Oh, hi. So this is the moment you've been waiting for all of 2020, I know. Like, it's here, it's the end of 2020, and that means the planning guide for the high school. And I just want to say, the last couple of years when I've been up here presenting the planning guide, it's been a lot about the process and a lot of work that's gone into the planning guide with the switch to trimesters, looking at our programming, making sure things align, are relevant. So there was a lot of work that went into it. This year, what was nice is it was kind of a chance to say, wow, yeah, the work we put in really paid off, because going through the guide, it felt a lot more routine of, oh yeah, these are our new classes. This is where they go. This is how they fit in. Even before, when we were able to propose classes to you, it was, here's the guide, how does it fit, how does it work, what are the implications, and just made the decisions a lot more easy, which was really great. So it speaks volumes to all the work that was done by our teachers, pupil services, administration, everybody that was involved. So not a lot of changes this year. So nothing really like big or flashy, but there is in your board packet the full guide, as well as just kind of the highlights. So what are the updates that were made? So we do have new classes, 5 new classes, which have all been previously approved, so no surprises there. The majority of the updates were within computer science. We've had a lot of courses just to make sequencing make more sense, more relevant in terms of the courses that we offer. We offered some new courses this year as we had phased some previous courses out. So that meant updating flowcharts, updating some of the prerequisites and things like that. So nothing really new there in terms of information, but that did get updated throughout the guide. There were a few name changes as well. 2 of them were within computer science as well, again, based on some of the updates in coursework, just trying to be more relevant and specific in the naming. And then our robotics course, the name was actually changed to mirror the Gateway course. So it makes more sense based on the curriculum that's there. And the description was also rewritten to make more sense along with the Gateway course as well. So it's a little bit more flavor text, if you will, for the course. We do have some courses that were retired because of the new courses that came in. So the curriculum that's within that is actually already infused into some of the new courses. So you can see that on the handout as well. And then just overall kind of updating, we made sure that all the flow charts were updated based on the new courses, retired courses. We had a couple of things residual from trimesters that hadn't been updated that we did catch. One was our IT Essentials class actually is for 10th, 11th, and 12th, but it wasn't identified as 10, 11, 12. So we made that update in there. And then another one, kind of exciting, our Family and Consumer Science program has really taken off. And we've been able to have a number of amazing courses that we're able to offer our students, including various certifications and transcripted credit. And we never updated our career clusters to really show all of the connections to various careers within our Family and Consumer Science programming with that. So those have also been updated as well. So that's the gist of the planning guide for this year. If there are any questions or comments?
No, looks good.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2021-2022 high school planning guide as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Sarah. All right, notice of school board election.
I've got that, let me just see here, trying to find it. Somewhere in here, I think.
Technology for superintendent's class.
Pass that.
All right. Notice is hereby given that an election to be held in the East-Troy Community School District on Tuesday, April 6, 2021. The following office is to be elected to succeed the present incumbents listed. The candidates receiving the highest number of votes will fill the regular term up for election and serve a 3-year term beginning the 26th of April, 2021 and ending the 4th Monday in April 2024. School Board Member Jessica Fuchs and School Board Member Tony Barrett, both on a 3-year term, are the incumbents. Notice is further given that a campaign registration statement and a declaration of candidacy must be filed no later than 5:00 p.m. on Tuesday, January 5th, 2021, in the office of the school district clerk. If nomination papers are required, the first day to circulate nomination papers is December 1st, 2020, and the final day for filing nomination papers is 5:00 p.m. on Tuesday, January 5th, 2021, in the office of the school district clerk. Notice was further given that if a primary is necessary, the primary will be held on Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. A description of the school district boundaries can be obtained from the school district office. That's it.
All right, thanks, Chris.
Right.
Next item, leave of absence request
That'll go into executive session.
and request of homeowner for board to consider property lot line inquiry.
That actually will be tabled until January, and then that probably will go into executive session that night.
Okay. All right, reports. Chris, you have anything else to add tonight?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not.
Kathy? Yep. Yep.
Yep. Oh, yeah, we got the full report. Mhm. Mhm. 2.2. Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, so that's exactly, it's all kind of, if you're positive tertiary, negative tertiary, are you funded by mostly property taxes? And then what's that schedule versus are you funded by state aid and what's that schedule?
Mhm.
That's a great question. But otherwise, if you have questions as you read through the audit report, let me know. Nothing was unusual, nothing was even new, like all the different GASB requirements are, except for one real small one, I will say, the requirement to move our funds out of student activity accounts 60 into 21, I think that was GASB 84, that's for the first time on here. I didn't put that in the notes because it's such a minor one. It wasn't minor for the operations of us, like again, a lot of teachers who run clubs, it impacted their coding quite a bit, but it was minor as far as audit reports go.
Okay.
There's another GASB that's fairly minor that's coming out, but it's been delayed because I think of everything going on everywhere with emergencies. The last thing we need is a new GASB rule. So if you guys have questions at some point, email me. Be happy to answer any of those. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kathy. All right, Amy.
Yeah, I just have the, Justin. Thank you. The meeting minutes from the Student Learning Subcommittee. They were placed at your seats earlier this evening. The subcommittee met on November 30th prior to the board meeting, and we mainly focused on policy. So much like the presentation that I did at, I believe it was the October board meeting, we were digging into policy first as a place to start. In digging in, we recognized a need to revise policy 110, which we will be working on and bringing forward to incorporate some educational philosophy. It makes no mention of our 6 C's, which pretty much is our philosophy and what we're based on, and also an equity statement. And then we'll be doing some changes to 361. Those will come forward to the board. We talked a bit about the definition of educational equity that the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction is using, and initially had some conversation, very brief conversation, about incorporating something relating to that into the mission statement, but that is more a board focus area than it is the Student Learning Subcommittee. Our next meeting is going to be Monday, January 18th at 4:30. At that meeting, we're going to dig into some readings we've done on culturally responsive practices and their role in our policies. And then we're also going to take a look at some high school ACT data to provide a source of information to provide a deeper look into educational equity as it exists currently within our district.
Thanks, Amy.
Yep.
Kate, you have anything for tonight? Okay. Sarah?
This week, the high school has a spirit week, and each day has a different dress-up theme. We have clubs hosting stocking stuffers drive to help those in need during the holiday season. We have another club selling handmade holiday gifts for friends and family. We have a band performance this Wednesday, which will be live streamed. We decorated a hallway in the high school to express thanks for the teachers, and that includes alumni positive comments about the staff, uplifting playlists posted on the wall, and random acts of kindness sticky notes that you can take. We also have students bell ringing at the Piggly Wiggly last weekend, and then we decorated the inside of the high school main entrance, and then we have boys and girls basketball seasons right now.
I have no report tonight, so we'll move on to policy review and development. It's the first reading of public participation at board meetings.
Yeah, so it's a first reading. I'm not sure if there's going to be an additional second reading. Obviously, if there's no changes needed, we'll just keep it as is. But I'm bringing this forward due to the fact there were a few people that had reached out to me saying, Chris, can you put this on as an agenda item for us just to review our current public participation? So our current public participation board policy is policy 187. And to be frank, I think it's a pretty thorough, good public participation policy when I compare it to other districts. But I do think that we probably need to have clarity provided in an area or two of that policy, and then just how we go about making sure that we're implementing it and that people are aware of the implementation. So when you look at that policy, I won't go verbatim through it. I could, but I won't. I think it's important for people to know that Wisconsin Act 123, which amended the open meetings law, does allow public notice of a meeting of a governmental body toward providing a period of public participation. So I think what's important there is for people to understand that public participation does not have to be in a regular board meeting or even a special board meeting, right? It allows school boards to have created a policy or a practice to put public participation into a board meeting. Our school board has elected, per 187, to make sure that we always allow public participation. I would tell you, I think that's very, very wise, right? I mean, an open board meeting is a meeting in the public, not of the public. And that's an important thing for people to always have to struggle to understand. Like, they come to a board meeting, they want to be in the board meeting with you, right? They want to have engagement, interaction, but it's more of a listening session for a person coming to listen to you. You're the ones doing the discussion and dialogue and the actions, and it's for a community member to listen. But we do allow at every regular board meeting an opportunity for public participation on our agendas. And that's what we follow then when we go over to our policy, is that time for public participation. We have it pretty delineated and clear. A few years ago, we added on our public participation to our agendas. If I had to guess, I think it'd probably be about 6-8 years ago, where we added that whole paragraph underneath about just reminding people while speaking during public participation, the importance of, sharing either praises about the district or criticism about the district. But obviously, if criticizing a specific person or individual, or that, to be very well aware and conscientious of what defamation is, but B, that there's another venue to do that rather than at public participation. We have a different policy for those things, such as, like, a citizen complaint policy. All of that being said, where I would take you guys on 187 on the public participation is, I think on subsection 3, where it says, in order to assure that persons who wish to appear before the board may be heard and at the same time conduct its meeting properly and efficiently, the board adopts as policy the following procedures and rules pertaining to public participation in regular board meetings. So I think the key is there, where I'm going with it is, first of all, do we always want to have public participation only at regular board meetings or special? If you were to ask my opinion, I will be blunt. I think it should be at regular. It has been at regular because it's in our policy, and I think it always should be. Should it be at special board meetings? I went back and looked at a lot of special board meetings to see, due to the fact, normally we have not had public participation at special board meetings, but I said normally. There are instances in the past where we have had on occasion public participation at a special board meeting. Mainly, they have been at, the most recent one was when we went over the reentry plan, and we were going to approve of it, that reentry handbook. We had a special meeting, and we did allow public participation before you guys voted on it that night. The other times in which we've had it is usually around the budget. And if we have to have further dialogue and discussion outside of our regular board meetings on the budget, then we might have a public participation for feedback due to that fact. Years ago, when we were, and we might, I hope we're not there again, but when we had to make some very, very, very long, dire decisions and cuts on the budget, if you recall then, we not only had public participation, we had it devoted one whole night to the budget. So remember, administration would present the budget proposal, then a couple days later, the community would come and they would have an opportunity to voice their concerns over that proposal to the board. And then a couple nights later, the board had their dialogue and discussion in front of the community and whether or not they were going to approve or alter those budget proposals. So where I'm going with it is, it very rarely has been in special meetings, but it has been there. I'm not denying that. It has been there on occasion, but we usually can denote pretty clearly where that's been. But I think that's one thing that might need to be discussed amongst your guys' level is, are you comfortable with continuing in that pattern? Or are you comfortable with never even having it in special meetings and saying, look, it says regular board meetings, we have it in regular board meetings, we don't have it in public. And if we're gonna have it in public, it'll be literally devoted to one night where we're asking for feedback, like we've done before on the budget. That's one thing I think that has to be kind of maybe discussed and provided a little more clarity to. The other thing would be our current, under subsection 3C, it says a presentation should be as brief as possible, which is why I would never present, unless an extension of time is granted. A speaker shall be limited to 5 minutes Discussion of any single item may be limited at the discretion of the presiding officer. But if you go up to subsection A, it says we will devote no more than 15 minutes at a full period of time. Now, we have in the past, on occasion, based upon the crowd, we've waived that 15 minutes. But that's been a board asking the board, and then the board all agreeing to it, to waive the 15 minutes, and then you provide ample time to allow the people to speak. Do we want to continue that practice? And what I mean by that is, the good news about that is you're recognizing there's an audience, and it seems like there might be a lot of people who want to speak. The bad news about doing it that way is, right, people might take it like, well, it seems like we kind of pick and choose when we want to implement the 15 minutes and not the 15 minutes. So I think, it's well intended. I totally understand why we've always done it in the past, but no good intention goes unpunished sometimes. So do we want to have that latitude or not? Again, your discretion. But I think these are things that, to provide clarity to this policy, are sometimes what people might get confused about when how it gets implemented and not implemented. And the limiting to 5 minutes, right? I mean, if we stuck to the 15 minutes, that's 3 people if they all took up 5 minutes. I think that's something that we have to think about on that. And then finally, under subsection D1, we have been under the premise, just so everybody, I think, I've been under the premise, usually that it's more of a listening, right? It's more of an opportunity to listen to the public share something. Like we said, numerous different things. And then oftentimes we don't respond. We'll say, you know what, we'll follow up with you, or we'll put it on the next agenda if the board elects to have it on the agenda. All right responses, don't get me wrong. But under subsection D1, it does state that questions of information asked by the speaker shall, when possible, be answered by the board president or referred to another member or another staff member for an immediate reply. Questions regarding investigations shall always be referred to the district administrator for a later response, and questions requiring board action shall be deferred for later consideration by the board for possible agenda item. Where I'm going with that is, I think we probably should try to have a little more clarity to that. Do we want it to be public participation is strictly a listening session for the 5 board members and administration? And then if the board my recommendation would be at the later point in the board meeting, during a board of education future items, that's where you could have discussion going, do we want to place something that we heard tonight from the public on another agenda item? And probably then turning to administration asking, what's a reasonable time to have it on the agenda item if there's something that we need to do to prepare for it? But I think that, I would suggest going that route rather than always responding back, because I think that can create this dialogue that it kind of goes against a little bit of the other language, and that is that it's a meeting in the public, not of the public, but yet then we're going to have this dialogue going back and forth. And I think that's again, people get confused. When do they have the dialogue with other people? When don't they? So I would suggest section sub D1, we might want to rephrase from responding back immediately too, which is in our language right now. And then the final thing is, it states that unless the established procedure is followed, members of the public will not be recognized by the president as the board conducts its official business. On that part, I want to state some of this might go from the last special meeting, which we didn't have public participation. And we did not allow the public to speak. You guys had a full dialogue and discussion over the operational model and whether or not were we going to have a temporary school closure after Thanksgiving or not. And it was, I need to take that one. I leaned over to Ted and I said to Ted, do you want to possibly have our student rep, Sarah, speak? And I said, it looks like we have another student rep in the back, and would you like to have that individual speak too? Due to the fact we have 2 student reps. That one's on me. Due to the fact, in hindsight, maybe that wasn't a good suggestion of me leaning over to Ted from a standpoint of saying, do we want to hear our student reps? I also feel from the standpoint, I want to apologize to Sarah on that, and I see her over there on my screen. I want to apologize because it kind of put her on the spot possibly, and that was not my intention. to put her on the spot. So maybe she was very comfortable. She looked like an expert getting up there, but she may have not felt comfortable. And here unintentionally, I put her on the spot by whispering over to Ted, maybe we want to ask our 2 student reps. So that one's on me. Well intended, but maybe not the best thought out process at the time by me. So again, I think, do we want to stick to, I think a couple questions. Do we want to stick to special meetings not having public participation, or at the discretion of what you've kind of provided me in the past? Chris, when you think it's really needed, put it on there. But don't have it on there very often. Your guys' call. I don't care. Second thing is, when to recognize people in public participation, and strictly being, are we saying, look, we're going to stick directly to that policy like we should, and that is, we won't recognize public participation if it's not on the agenda. And I think that is a smart decision, and we've lived up to it all the time. We just didn't live up to it that last time, and that one's on me due to the fact that I looked at them as student reps. But, you know, the student rep wasn't on the agenda, so the student rep, you guys, I still think, could call on the student rep during your participation. The student representative is an extension of U5. So the student rep, the active student rep, can always be seeked out by you guys to give feedback. They don't have to be on the agenda of reporting out. They're an extension of you. They just don't get to vote. They don't get to vote, a student rep. But I would say it should only be the active student rep too. Or else, wow, let's just invite every student rep back for the last 40 years and have them always comment. So those are my suggestions and feedback. You guys take it from there, and if you have any questions, let me know, or if you want me to work on something, please let me know.
Yeah, from my standpoint, I think the 15-minute thing, I've never adhered to that as long as I've been here. I mean, it's usually limited to a certain degree, but we've never said, no, 15 minutes, that's it. So I could see that disappearing.
I think being flexible in terms of how, you know, quantity of public and adjusting the times that we allot for, you know, if we have 30 people that want to do a public participation, they want something to say, maybe everybody gets a minute to get it out. I don't know. Just kind of adjust as needed, I guess.
I think the tough thing on that, Jess, if I can just say it, is I totally agree trying to meet, like, having it be efficient still and not spending 3 hours listening to a public on a really hot topic. The only thing is if it's not known in advance a little bit in a policy, people oftentimes come prepared, right? With their letter or their notes due to the timeline that they know they have. And then they might show up thinking they have, let's say, 3 minutes, and now it gets adjusted to us at the last minute because of the quantity saying you'll have a minute tonight. It could really throw some people who have prepared quite lengthy for those 3 minutes, not feel they're being heard in the manner that they thought they would be.
As far as other recognizing people to speak during the meeting, that can be an issue. I don't know if we can get it in the policy of somehow, if we all agree to have somebody speak, do it, or I know the village in their meetings, that's how they do it. They basically have the board vote if they want to recognize somebody to speak in the audience during the regular portion of the meeting. No, majority, I would think.
I would be okay with that, because sometimes we do have people who are in the audience who have,
I think that
Something that-
times does make sense.
yeah, it's not all the time that it happens, and it's not all the time that it's, you know, gonna be used either, but there's times where it'd be nice to kind of hear, you know, especially if somebody really has something to say.
My only concern with that would be if somebody came with a point that they knew was not necessarily going to meet with our approval. I would hate to be put in a position where we said, we don't feel like you're going to add something to this discussion. You know, let's use the referendum as an example. If somebody came in and was vehemently against the referendum, and if we legitimately felt like they weren't going to add anything else to the discussion, and we voted 4-1, 3-2, 5-0, not to accept them to come and speak, well, now now there's sort of that perception out there that we chose not to let them speak because we didn't like what they were going to say.
Well, I think if we adhere to our main, we start the meeting, we have our general public participation then. There's an opportunity at that point to speak. I think it's the secondary opportunity while the meeting is being conducted. Oh, on item F, I've got something that I'd like to say. I think that's where this comes in.
Can I?
But they won't
I
get
get
to.
your thoughts on that. I think if, just to try to help facilitate you, I really believe the bigger thing that you'd want to stick to is when do you want to have public participation? I mean, it says regular board meetings, so we're following that. Do you always want to have it on our special meeting all the time? And then we just always have it. And then somebody can always at least voice their opinion on whatever that agenda topic is or something off the agenda topic. Because public participation doesn't mean they have to be on the agenda topic. So they could voice it on it or off of it. But I think that's the thing. I think going down the venue of possibly opening up that you're going to entertain people to give feedback during discussion action items, I think that's why public participation is there to begin with, for them to do it prior to your dialogue. Because now all of a sudden you're not having a meeting in the public, you are having a meeting with the public. And that could get very tricky very quickly.
What's the downfall of having citizens' participation at special meetings?
I just said we have it all of
Yeah.
Right.
Very rarely something can have special. Put it on there and
And half,
speak, we should listen to them anyway.
Yeah.
and a lot of times, some of our special meetings are called but still closed to the public. So, I mean, there's not often that there's an opportunity for people to speak at those anyways.
Yeah, I
Ones
mean,
that are in public, I would be definitely okay if we wanted to have public participation at those.
Yeah, I mean, clearly if it's a closed session, there's a reason it's a closed session, and that's decided by law. However, I would tend to agree. I mean, I think we don't get as much participation, I think, as any of us would like from the community. And I think that any opportunity to squash people from coming in just is going to make that worse. I see nothing negative about having more transparency and more opportunity for people getting a chance to share what's on their mind.
The only thing that I have a quick question or addendum on is how do we include our live stream audience who wishes to participate in real time? How do we do that? That's the only other question, because I know there's a lot of people that watch this, and it kind of blows my mind when I hear about it, but I haven't heard too many people that want to provide feedback, but maybe that would change if the opportunity were presented.
I think those people can email or call, and we could relay something if it's,
But if
of
it's
importance.
during a meeting,
Well, but that.
Well, it would
the
have to be
citizens
beforehand.
before.
They would have to
Right.
send something in, a letter to me or Chris or somebody
but
saying,
that's not
could you read
participation
this?
in real time, though. That's what I'm saying. Like, as this meeting's going on and you're going through the beginning, reading off of, the public participation policy, we ask if there's any public participation. If we have somebody who's watching the live stream going, hey, I've got something I'd like to say regarding staff or whatever, kudos, whatever it is, and they don't have an opportunity to say, or an idea that they'd had related to the agenda or not related to the agenda.
I think some districts, I think the question is, and I know Justin's there, I won't put him on the spot right now. If he could answer it, great, but just be like, if you want to get off the spot, you could just say, I'll talk to you about that later and we can look into that. That's fine too, I totally get it. And that is, some districts have had success with that and some have not. From the standpoint, I won't talk about a district that got hacked during the public participation on their live stream and it did not go well. And what was hacked and then represented over the stream was not great for the district. I think some of the issue, and Justin would know better than me, I love the idea, and Steve brought up last time, I think the issue is, again, providing the link and knowing who is going to be participating. So it's really the work on the front end. And what I mean by that is that we still wouldn't be able to just have people participate at the board wanted this open session. We've gone through our agenda and now our public participation, people just hop into the meeting. It's one thing to be live streaming and watching, it's another to be in it So I think the question would be, we would need to know in advance, I think, Justin would know better than me, we would need to know in advance, probably within, I would think, 24, 48 hours of advance, of who wants to participate during public participation, so we could provide them an appropriate link in to the meeting, so they could actually provide their feedback for it over public participation. Justin, do you have any idea on that?
Yeah, that sounds, as far as I know, that sounds kind of accurate. If we did want to go with a virtual public participation option, I would suggest that we purchase a Zoom license. I know they have a lot of nice features like a waiting room and stuff like that, where we can approve people to jump into the meet for a certain amount of time. I think we would kind of have to get a list of people beforehand and email addresses to provide them with that link, because it's not just like the general public streaming link to watch the Zoom meeting, it's a participation link. Not something we've done in the past, so I just kind of looked into it. I can explore it further if you want. Again, a lot of those features are paid features, so we'd have to have like a single yearly subscription account. And I know there's some add-on fees if you want to do provide people with like telephone access, if you want to be able to dial in with a regular landline or cell phone instead of using a computer with the Zoom app. But it's certainly something we can look into further if you're interested in that.
We could definitely explore it, look into it, and come back to you guys and let you know all the details involved, and then you guys can make a decision whether or not you want us to continue to move forward with it.
Okay,
Okay.
All right.
that'd be
Does that
good.
sound good?
Yep.
And so if I can, if I get some direction, at least now, you guys, in regards to, do you want me to, from what I'm hearing, can I work on the public participation policy 187 to work in some sort of verbiage in regards to being that we continue to be flexible, even though a designated 15 minutes is there, will be designated to allow, all voices to be heard within an efficient manner. And then that I'll work in that not only regular board meetings will have public participation, but we'll always post public participation at special board meetings unless dignified as a closed session.
Sounds good.
Does that work?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, and then I'll bring the language back to you guys as we make the changes. I mean, there's subtle changes, nothing drastic to what we're already doing during public participation, but I'd still like us to go through and get a first, second, and a final reading on it.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Communications announcements. Anybody have anything?
I just want to say everything's going great. And I don't mean great like, oh, there's no challenges, but just a credit again to the staff and to the students and to the families. Staff for recognizing that, you know what, it is a challenging year. And yet they're stepping up to the plate, coming every day, trying their darndest to provide a good in-person and virtual learning opportunity and experience. And to all the administrators, and I mean every single administrator, every single supervisor, support staff, everybody has so many things that they're having to work on and do multiple tasks from. And not always in the most convenient times and convenient places, but we're working together and getting through it. And, you know, you find out, I mean, I know you already know this, and this is not a plug, but I'm going to say it. You really find out when you're going through a crisis like this, the districts who have a full-time HR, how beneficial that is. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, because the amount of time and efforts and energy that all of us are having to put in to cover what an HR person oftentimes would do, right? So, and to stay abreast of that. So, you want to call it a plug? I'll call it a little bit of a plug, but it's reality. I mean, we were talking about it before we had a pandemic. But, and then to the students and to the families, it's a credit to them. I mean, I really, really was so pleased with families listening to our letters and our board discussion that they did what they thought they needed to do for themselves, the district, and their own child or children. And that we had so many take advantage of the temporary virtual. And I think that was you know, it helped us immensely these last few weeks. So I really appreciate that. And I'll say, I hope people really reflect upon that and think upon that again when we return from winter break, to continue to help their families and help the community and help us to continue to stay open and afloat and keep moving in the right direction. My final thing is, it's the holiday season, right? And I just can't say enough about the East Troy Holiday Light Show. I mean, that's incredible. And I remember going to a chamber meeting. I know it happened last year, but I remember going after last year's light show, going to a chamber meeting, I think in the spring, and it was before March 13th. I know that because it was not all chaos yet. And just hearing about what they wanted to do this coming up year, and hearing Jamie talk and others, and then their discussion about, you know, and maybe we can have the district get involved and have a partnership. And wow, what a partnership it's been, right? I mean, so many different community people have been involved, and so many different levels in the staff that I can't even go on. But just from all the programming that's happened at the district level, all the fabricating the LCD ornaments and everything else, and all the people that have been involved, from the community and businesses to other things, and just hearing, you know, seeing the state, or seeing the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel giving it an article over it and a video. I mean, that's pretty telling. So those are the type of partnerships. When we talk about partnerships, that's what we're talking about. And you know, that's an authentic, real, live skill that's occurring. And there's not I mean, from pre-K through 12, they've been involved in this. So it's pretty incredible. And we talk about personalizing things, you know, do the light show and personalize it for yourself, right, with your app. I mean, it's unbelievable how it relates to everything we're about. So I just want to thank every single person who's been involved in that. And it's such a long list. I don't want to state one person because it won't do justice. So, but just great. So that's all I have.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Board, any future items? Okay. And I just need a motion to adjourn for executive session.
I'll make the motion to adjourn to executive session. We tabled the discussion of leave, correct? Okay,
Yep.
so this would be for the discussion request of homeowner for board to consider the property line inquiry. Oh, no, I'm sorry, this is the.
No, we want the other one.
Reverse, sorry. This is the adjourned to executive session for the discussion of leave absence request under 19.851B, 19.851C, and 19.851E.
Okay, roll call vote. Steve? Yes. Jessica?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
And I vote yes. We're in closed session.